Once again, I'm Sean Civil Clita for another topic of Rizal class, which is the indolence of the Filipinos. So, is it a matter of indolence or industry? Let's take a closer look. So, learning objectives at the end of this chapter, the student should be able to summarize in their own words Rizal's essay on the indolence of the Filipinos. Number 2, explain the factors that cause the indolence of the Filipinos. And lastly, to defend their personal views on the question of the indolence of the Filipinos. Filipinos during the period of Spanish colonization were commonly described as lazy. Several foreigners visiting the Philippines from the 17th to 19th centuries affirmed this view with their observations. Gemelli Carreri, an Italian traveler who came to the country in the 17th century, remarked, "It is their laziness that makes them appear less ingenious, and they are so entirely addicted to it, that if in walking they find a thorn run onto their foot, they will not stoop to put it out of the way, that another may not tread on it." A more scathing portrayal was given by Friar Gaspar de San Agustin in 1720. He stated that their laziness is such that if they open a door, they never close it, and if they take any implement for any use, such as a knife, a pair of scissors, hammer, etc., they never return it whence they took it, but drop it there at the foot of the work. So indolence was also commented upon by the German scholar Fyodor Yagor in the 19th century. Along the river Pasig, somebody might be seen asleep on a heap of coconuts. If the nuts run ashore, the sleeper rouses himself, pushes off with a long bamboo, and contentedly relapses into slumber as his eccentric rats regains the current of the river. More than a simple observations, the remarks given by these foreigners resulted in a perennial view of the Filipinos as incapable or inherently lacking in abilities. So Rizal's work Sobre la Indolencia de los Filipinos, on the indolence of the Filipinos, was an attempt to rectify this view. The essay was serialized in 6 issues of La Solidaridad from July 15 to September 15, 1890. It addressed the accusations made by the foreigners by establishing through careful argumentation that indolence was not an inherent trait, but as an effect of the conditions imposed upon us, the Filipinos. So Rizal's reasoning echoes the ideas laid down earlier by Gregorio Santiago's El Progreso de las Filipinas in 1881. Santiago advocated for reforms in the government's taxation system because he believed that public revenues were necessary for the overall development of the country. He also confronted the issue of the laziness of Filipinos by attributing the trait to poor economic conditions that rendered the natives lethargic and unmotivated. So Rizal's essay, through address the issue of Filipinos' laziness, are more directly inasmuch as talk about it has continued not only by employees who to blame it to cover their own stupidity, not only by friars who consider it necessary for their perpetuation of their pretension that they cannot be replaced, but also by serious-minded and disinterested persons. From the outset, Rizal does not deny the existence of the indolence of the Filipinos. The predisposition exists, he notes, because the warm climate demands of the individual quietness and rest, just as cold climate stirs up the men to work and to be active. However, he asserts that the evil does not lie in the existence of the indolence, but in the way that it is perpetuated. He points out the evil is found in the fact that the indolence in the Philippines is exaggerated indolence, a snowball indolence, so to speak, a vice which increases fourfold as time elapses. The Filipinos were not always lazy according to Rizal. When one looked back at the pre-colonial past, he or she would see the industry, agriculture, commerce of the early Filipinos engaged in. Rizal cites as one example an account written by Pigafetta, who described the flourishing trade of goods such as cinnamon, pepper, nuts, and other articles. Mining was also practiced by early Filipinos, as evidenced by Pigafetta's descriptions of vessels and utensils made of pure gold. If early Spanish accounts were in agreement to the industry of the Filipinos, what then brought about the change in them? Rizal determines that the circumstances that produced a predisposition towards laziness were the constant wars waged during the early stages of colonization, the Moro piracies that occurred in the centuries that followed, and the abuses committed by the Spaniards against the Filipinos. All the death and destruction brought about by these situations, according to Rizal, took away from the Filipinos their desire to work. Yet Rizal also argues that while the previous circumstances made it possible for laziness to take root in the Filipinos' constitution, other factors ensured its maintenance. Rizal points out that while the government did not provide the economic and moral incentives to encourage industry among the Filipinos, the Filipinos themselves also had their own flaws. He states that the defect of education and lack of national sentiment seen in the Filipinos only contributed to maintaining the Filipinos' predisposition towards indolence. Having explained the reasons why the Filipinos became lazy, Rizal concludes that all attempts to reform the Filipino would only be successful with education and freedom. With this, Rizal argues convincingly that indolence in the Filipinos is not an inherent trait, but rather a malady with its own causes and cures. So that's all for the topic on the indolence of the Filipinos. Thank you very much.